Hey, my name is Rosen, and I'm an indie game developer. Over the last decade of my life, I have, in some capacity, in different ways and varying degrees of commitment, been working on a video game. Actually, it's my dream game. For those who know me, it's been a bit of an open secret, but the truth is I've hardly talked about it at all over the years. Nobody outside of me and a few people who have worked on it know a thing about it. It's been this secret thing hidden away on my hard drive for years. Despite constant work, I haven't been ready to show it to the world because I'm worried that it's just not good enough. I see so many other indie game developers showing off their dream games, people who have backgrounds in game design and coding, and their games just look great. I can't help but think mine looks a little scuffed in comparison. But putting my anxieties aside, this is the year that I want to share my work. Because the truth is, I love what I'm doing, and I want to share that with all of you. This project is really important to me. It's been a companion to me for a decade, and it's seen me through major milestones in my life. During the hard times, it gave me something to work towards, and it gave me a purpose. It kept me sharp and improved nearly every skill I have, along with flexing muscles I didn't know I had. I learned to code midway through my career just to put this game together. Most importantly, it allowed me to keep my friends close as we worked over the years, struggling through and thriving in that creative process. I finally put the pieces into place to give this project the time and attention that it deserves, and I want to tell you all about it. The game is called Legacy Lost: A Revolution of Scales, and it's going to be released by my very small team by the name of Lost Continent. Legacy Lost is a JRPG, despite the fact that it's not Japanese, nor does it involve any role-playing. But I think it's a descriptor that everyone here understands. So, what kind of features and gameplay can you expect from the game? Legacy Lost is a side-scroller with light puzzle platforming elements. It is not a platformer, so my intention is to avoid any kind of skill floor that would lock out players who aren't good at platforming. Really, the vertical space is just utilized to encourage exploration and interaction with puzzles within dungeons. Artistically, this decision was heavily inspired by Valkyrie Profile. However, since that game was entirely composed of unique, pre-rendered backgrounds, we had to scale down to a tile map system to allow for flexibility in dungeon design and financial plausibility. However, we are able to splurge now and then with some awesome, unique hand-painted backgrounds. One thing we're trying to do here is push genre conventions forward by really critically asking how they can be improved. For me, JRPG dungeons have generally been pretty lackluster. Their mechanical complexity usually goes as far as hitting a switch to open a door or finding a key. For the most part, JRPG dungeons are places where fights happen, and the player is able to maintain interest through immaculate vibes. But we can't afford to survive off vibes alone. Because of this, we've decided to implement dungeon-specific mechanics that would open up puzzling and exploration for the player in each dungeon. Throughout the game's mini dungeons, you should expect to see 4 of these dungeon abilities as they recur. 3 of them are currently fully functional, and the 4th I'm still hashing out with the team. These abilities generally connect to puzzling, but also utilize our Y-axis to allow players to explore. For example, we have a magnetic-like mechanic that repels the player away from certain areas, allowing them to access new areas while blocking others. Other abilities summon a shadow version of the player that allows them to pass through barriers within a restricted range. Putting it all together, we want each dungeon to feel a bit like a synthesis between Golden Sun, with its emphasis on logical, sequence-based puzzles, and Symphony of the Night, in the way that it encourages players to double back on an old area once they've obtained a new ability. Of course, I think that the star of our show is our unique combat system. So, JRPG means turn-based battles, right? Well, mostly, but just like the dungeons, we wanted to add a twist. There's a lot of talk about why traditional turn-based went out of style and whether or not people would still like them today. But for me, I think there's enough of those out there, and I've got a backlog that reaches back 30 years, so I think there's plenty of stuff to quench my traditional turn-based thirst if I want to. So, we tried something different. Our battle utilizes positioning as the player struggles against the enemies to find the most advantageous position. Battles take place on a battlefield with interactable elements such as traps that will harm characters placed on them, or buffs that have special properties. The player has the ability to move enemies and allies when they are placed. So, the gameplay loop here is to try to maneuver enemies into disadvantageous positions while trying to keep the good ones for yourself, kinda similar to Radiant Historia. However, the player will need to be careful and plan ahead because enemies can move players as well. Once the positioning is complete, the action round starts, and it plays out like a typical JRPG turn-based battle, with the turn order being read from left to right on the positioning grid. Did I mention that Legacy Lost is also a class-based game? Each of the characters has access to 3 pre-designated classes which they can choose to unlock and progress. There are 9 classes in the game, and each class has a skill bank of 10 abilities. Characters also have access to personal abilities not related to their classes, and right now, each of the characters has 5 personal skills planned. Skills, in general, cause damage of a particular type and may have interesting AoE properties based on the state of the positioning grid. For example, firing an arrow that does increasing damage for each enemy that it passes through, or firing 10 magic bolts randomly at enemies or allies in spaces adjacent to the character. Many of the abilities have friendly fire, so the player will need to be careful during the positioning phase to set up their big attacks. Classes also have implications for the positioning phase. For example, the Champion class can push enemies back 1 space upon placement, whereas the Disciple class can switch places with an enemy. Some classes even have unique positioning combos with others. Classes are freely changed at the beginning of each combat round. Finally, powerful enemies have a sequence of damage types displayed above their head. For instance, an enemy might show icons for slashing, bludgeoning, and lightning damage. Performing these damage types in this sequence will put the enemy into a staggered state which greatly lowers its defense, makes it vulnerable to execution attacks, and opens it up for team combos. The goal here is to give players another way to engage with the positioning system by allowing them to think about what order their party should be placed in, as not every character has access to every damage type. I also wanted battles to feel climactic, building up to a single point before releasing a massive momentum-shifting attack a la Valkyrie Profile or Sekiro. It also opens up for enemies to feel like puzzles themselves that need to be cracked piece by piece. There are so many other things that I want to share with you. There are other mechanics like a non-typical progression system and a weapon customization system, but I'd call what I shared with you here the bread and butter of the game mechanics. We've built a very strong foundation for the game. Everything I mentioned up to this point is already fully functional from a coding perspective. At this time, we are severely bottlenecked by visual assets, which makes sharing a lot of these visuals kind of difficult. But we have our small team of artists working hard to fix that. I want to introduce you to my team, and I want to show you our gorgeous painterly art and let you listen to our lush orchestral score. And I want to tell you about our complex, engaging writing. I want to talk about exactly how I coded these mechanics and all of the obstacles I faced along the way. You can expect all of those things to be posted here in the future, but it's going to take some time. If you want smaller updates where we update our blog regularly, you can check out our website at lostcontinentgames.com. I really hope what I showed you here was enough to interest you in what we're doing, and I'm really excited to keep sharing up until that magical day when this game finally releases. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. I hope you like my approach. I see a ton of other devlogs and they're like full of memes and jokes and they're really fun to watch and I think they have a ton of personality. And it's crazy to me that these devs also have video editing skills on top of everything else they do. I even wrote up a whole memey jokey script, but I scrapped it because it's, not really me. I really just want to talk about art and the process and the journey and the beauty, and I mostly want to do it earnestly with all of you. So I hope you can meet me on that wavelength, and I'll see you all around.